So let's look at again, computer networks. We were talking about that. So what does it do? What does computer network means for us? Anything which helps us, transmit documents, send emails, websites, databases, anything server which connects music, so printers, faxes, telephony, wireless conference, all these are interconnected, right? So all these are interconnected via a physical medium or with a network technologies, right? So that's more important for us to really know. As an analyst, as a security analyst, we need to know what is this and how are these, how these really work, and what are the backend technologies, what are the backend concepts on which these are working. Okay. Then let's look at how networks is set up, like how is designed, architectured. That is called something called as network topology, right? It's nothing but arrangement in which computers, systems, or network devices are connected to each other. Um, so for you and me to communicate, we need to be connected to each other. But are we physically connected? No, we are not, right? But how are we connected? Do you know how are we connected?
Via internet.
Internet is a very vague term, but in reality, how are we connected? So we are connected via a technology called Zoom, which is a third-party solution, right? So internet is a backbone which it works on. That's something is fine. But how are we connected to each other? Internet, yes, we need internet, but we need a communication channel, a technology which helps us communicate with each other, right? So we have got this Zoom technology where you log in, I log in into the same room, as the same conference room, and we both communicate.
Okay.
So that's the link between you and me, which helps us transmit data back and forth. The which I'm talking now, you're able to listen in real time without even, how do I say that? Even without a gap of a millisecond. It's not that I'm speaking here and then after a millisecond or a couple of milliseconds, you're listening there. No, I'm speaking and you're listening there. It's almost in real time. How does it all happen? It happens based on the network technologies and some of the background hardware which we use, which provides us this connectivity, right? But this was not how internet was when we started, when we actually started back in somewhere in 1980s or earlier to that as well, right? So some of the topologies or some of the way we architectured ourselves was some of these designs. Like we had mesh, star, bus, and ring, right? So these all provide you a way to connect each other by providing advantages and as well as disadvantages in using that part of design. So let's look at the first topology or the design, which is a bus topology. So bus topology is nothing but you have a single network cable to which all your network connections, network or your endpoints or desktops or workstations are connected to, right? So what happens here? All devices share a single communication line or cable. That's absolutely what's happening here. One long cable acts as a backbone. Yes. And all the nodes are connected to this particular network cable. Absolutely fine. Simple and easy. But do you think this is the best way for us to organize ourselves?
I think no.
I think no. What do you think? Why do you think?
Because if any problem came in cable and then all users will affect.
Exactly. Spot on. So that's the biggest problem of that. So though there are advantages, that ease of installation, less cabling XYZ, but the biggest difficulty was fault isolation and adding a new device. Because based on the cable length, you can add more devices, but if the cable length exceeds its limited requirement, then you'll start seeing a drop in packets or loss of communicate or connectivity as well, right? So that's why people say that this was the very first technology, the topologies which they used, but later they realized that's not the most appropriate way for us to use, or not the appropriate one for us, because there are a lot of issues which can go wrong when even one guy stops working here, or there is a fault here. The rest of all the desktops or workstations will stop seeing any communication happening with them as well, right? And then they have a lot of choke points here, because if this guy is communicating, this guy cannot communicate because there is a lot of chatter on the line as well. There's a lot of traffic which is on the line, because if both the station starts communicating with each other at the same time, there's a possibility of that electronic transmission clashing with each other, and then nulling out itself, and then basically the endpoint will say, I never received your communication. So repeated communication happens, unnecessary chaos. Then we have something called as a ring topology. The ring topology is nothing but like a bus topology, but you close a loop in the instead of keeping the bus open. As you can see, it's a ring topology. You have a ring. Around the ring, you have your workstations placed. And then you also have something called the repeaters. So what happens is, the repeaters help in boosting the signal. And all the workstations can communicate with each other in this way, right? So this communication, this guy can talk to this person, this guy can talk to this person, right? So again, as I said, the signal is passed along the ring in one direction from a device to device until it reaches the destination. So suppose this person wants to talk to this person, he has to go through this way. He can only go to his right hand side and then reach out to the endpoint, right? And he cannot go in one other direction, since it's a unidirection. It's a bidirectional, unidirectional. There is only one direction of information flow. It cannot go other way, right? So, but it's a circular one. Let's look at advantages and disadvantages. Advantages are relatively easy to install and configure. Ring is better in handling the load. A central service is not required for managing topologies. Fine. Disadvantages are data sent from one node to other has to pass through all type of intermediate nodes. Yes, if this workstation wants to talk to this one, it has to go through the rest of the 4 workstations in the network to reach out to the 5th network. The transmission speeds dropped and with increase in the number of nodes, right? So if the transmission speeds obviously will drop, because every other workstation is trying to also communicate on the same channel where the other station is also trying to work on. Failure in one node is the network in a node in the network can cause the entire network to fail. Obviously, if this particular person or this workstation fails, the entire ring is collapsed here. The ring is disconnected basically. So none of the workstation will be able to communicate with each other, because there is a workstation which failed and the link is not connected. Any questions, guys?
Nothing from my side.
Okay.
Then Kishore, in this,
yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
In this ring concept, we can go 2 ways, right? Like right and left. Can't
yeah.
We go
So
like
initially they only said in one direction. The communication can go in one direction only. Right.
Okay.
So they probably would have said that I can go in this direction. Probably the technology would have come for a bidirectional technologies, or these things. But again, so again there is a lot of other technology which also needs to come in terms of handling the load. Because see, understand now is, if this person wants to talk to this person and talk to this person, and this guy wants to talk to this person and this person, and this guy wants to talk to this person, how many rules would you have to have in place, and how much processing power would you need at repeaters to handle that kind of load, right? So this repeater would actually be handling load for other workstations. If this guy wants to talk to this person, how will he decide to send the request from this way or to this way? Then you need to kind of understand which is the shortest route first. Probably at that point of time when ring technology was implemented, the shortest paths first, right? The open short OSPF technology was not introduced. And that's the reason probably they said, I can only use one direction rather than dynamically identifying what is the shortest route for me. Later point of time, this all technologies were identified which can choose the best shortest path for the communication, and then the bidirectional communication started happening.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the mesh technology is nothing but where every other workstation is connected to each other. So it means they have a point-to-point link. There are dedicated link carriers which they're talking among each other, and even if one workstation fails, other workstations will still continue to work. Right? It can handle heavy traffic. Again, as I said, the failure in one node doesn't impact the entire network. Exactly. But you'll have a lot of cabling requirement there. Cost incurred to set up this maintenance are high, and the administration of mesh is difficult because you need to quickly identify, so see, I'll tell you what. So for me to communicate with you or with your systems, I need to understand what type of operating systems you're using, what type of network speeds you are capable of handling. So suppose I am using a Windows 7 or I'm using an older laptop where my network connectivity speeds are lesser than your network connectivity speeds. So administrator needs to do a lot of processing, a lot of understanding or handling of this communication needs to be there, and try to pinpoint a mistake would also become very tedious, since there is everybody's talking to everybody. Now, where did the fault come? I don't know. So that's the problem which you'll face, which comes across when handling a mesh network.
Got it.
Perfect. Then comes the star topology. Star topology is nothing but you have your central controller, which is a hub, where you're all connected towards the hub, and there is no interconnection between the workstations. Workstations are not directly connected among themselves, but they are connected to a central hub where they where they communicate using the hub, right? So everything is controlled by the hub, and this acts as a central repository, like a traffic cop between all the workstations, like looking at the packet and telling him where exactly to go, which switch port or hub port to go. The advantages are less expensive, easy to install, robustness. One big disadvantage is this: star topology is dependency on the on single point of failure, which is the hub itself. If hub fails, the entire network is down, and that's the biggest disadvantage for a star topology. Okay, let me ask you a question. What type of topology do you think is set up in your current home?
The latest one.
What do you mean by latest one?
I believe it's a hub.
Star.
Star. Okay, what about you, Srimala?
Yeah, I think star only.
Why do you think it's a star?
I think it's a hub.
Okay, yeah, again, a hub, star, interchangeable. Why do you think so?
Because one station, if not works, other can easily communicate, right? I mean,
yeah, but in your home currently, what type of topology is set up? How are you connected to internet?
Be connected to a router.
Wireless.
And
wireless
then
router.
Yes.
Again, so imagine I remove all these lines and I make it as a Wi-Fi router. Does it make a star topology? Exactly, right? So in the current situation, the hub is replaced by a wireless router at home, and it's all wireless communication. Correct? So at homes, we are using a star topology. My laptop, my phone, my tab, my TV, my fridge, my fans, everything is connected to a Wi-Fi router. From there on, it goes out to internet. Right?
Yeah.
Again, again, we'll look at something called as a hybrid topology, which is more or less like a combination of different mixtures of topologies. Like in this case, I'm using a bus and a hub topology, right? So if let's say suppose this is HR, this is finance, this is IT. So everyone has their own different network, their own different connection, but they are not interconnected. But they are connected to a star topology, but they are also connected as a bus topology within their own department, right? So so this is one way of depicting topologies. But in current situation, in current scenario, let's talk about it. So at home, we are using it as a star topology, right? It's a star topology. But after that, what do you think happens? How do you think your network Wi-Fi router is connected to your ISP? What topology would that be?
that also is a hub, right?
Correct. It's a star topology because it's not your hub or your Wi-Fi router, but there are multiple Wi-Fi routers which are connected the same way. Probably, yes, my Wi-Fi router will be connected to a junction box in my own apartment, and that junction box is connected to one central server, the closest nearby server, and that server is connected to the nearest ISP server, right? So this is all connected to one central server or multiple central servers, like a failover servers, and then these are connected to other internet connected servers, making it a star topology, like a mesh topology as well, sometimes. Sometimes a reason I say mesh topology is because, let's say suppose, how many of you use ACT here?
Yeah, me.
You use ACT. So you should have a junction box at your home, right? So your broadband connection comes to your junction box, and that junction box connects to some other box as well, right?
Yes.
Correct. So it means and then junction box connects to one of the primary ISP servers or multiple ISP servers, right? Because the reason I say that is because one ISP server goes down, there is another secondary server which can easily pick up and still continue to provide the services, right? That becomes a mesh limited but small mesh technology, mesh topology there. Correct?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happens is there is a hybrid topology, there is a hybrid design of how everybody is connected to each other, right? So again, this is from a physical networking standpoint. So I think I thought about something else, but again, that doesn't correlate to this one. So again, from your ISP side or from your own organization side, since you're all working in an organization, so if you see in an organization, you are connected to your laptop and you're connected to a network cable, which is connected to a network port in your desk. That network port goes to a switch, and that switch connects to an ISP router, and that router is connected to a ISP service providers, right? So you're all basically in a physical medium as well. In your own organization is connected. You are all connected via star topology, where it might be following up a single channel, like a bus terminology, like dependency on a switch or a router or however that is. So in your own organizations as well, you will be using your wireless routers. Some of the senior executives will have Wi-Fi access because they want to move to meetings. So what they'll do is the moment they disconnect from this one, they'll go to a Wi-Fi router. But the Wi-Fi router is also connected to your ISP provider because that's also connected to internet. Probably Wi-Fi router is again connected to a switch, and that switch is providing you the necessary services. Right? So more or less you will use hybrid technology, but hybrid topologies, but predominantly it's more revolves around one central server or one central controller providing you all the services or handling the connections. Okay, any questions, guys? Okay, let's look at, you know, how does the communication really happens? How does the information flows from my machine to your machine, and how it's happening? So let's say suppose I am sender and you are receiver. So Kishore is a sender, Kiran is a receiver. So I am sending information to you. So I am writing a letter. So this is the basic analogy which we'll use to understand the next layer, or which is called the OSI layers. So I write a letter, I put it in an envelope, I write the to sender and the destination address and the sender's address, and drop it in a mailbox, nearest mailbox. The letter is carried out from the mailbox to the post office by a postman, right? He is my communication medium here. The pink line is nothing but that person, that carrier there. Again, the letter is delivered to a carrier by the post office, right? It goes to the post office. Again, it sorts out and it puts on a bus which goes to the next destination. The parcel is carried out from the source to the destination. The destination post office receives the post. It looks at the destination and says that, okay, this address belongs to, say, suppose High Tech City or Khairatabad or whatever that area, right? It puts that area, and then, you know, oh, this letter needs to go to that area. So that area gets sorted out and sent to that post office, which is in that area. From that area, from that post office in that area, the postman will take it, deliver it to Kiran at his home, right? So here you saw there are layers of people handling one single envelope, which is packet of information, right? The pink line is always the communication medium or the carrier which supports the entire information flow, right? Okay, then, so again, the analogy which we just spoke about is predominantly for us to try to understand the OSI model, which is the open standard or international standard for organization. Organization is a multi-body dedicated to world agreement for international standards in basically communication standards, right? Which is called the OSI layers, Open Systems Interconnect Model, which is developed in 1970s. ISO is the organization, OSI is the model, right? So there are 7 layers of the OSI layers. I'm sure you might have gone through this, but again, we'll all reiterate and practically try to understand how it really works. So there are, the first layer is physical, second is data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session, presentation, and application layer, right? So all these layers, if you put the analogy of sending a letter to Kiran, these all layers help me do this activity, right? So we'll look at an example as well. Again, you know, I'll stop it here and check whether you have any questions. Any questions, guys?
No.
Okay. Let me stop this. So the OSI layer is not a protocol. It's a model to understand the designing of a network architecture that is flexible, robust, and interoperable. So, so as we spoke about the 7 layers, let's look at 2 different images here. The first image will try to understand what is the responsibility? Who's responsible for what in this layers? So as you look at the application, presentation, session, and transport layers are the responsibility of the host. The network data link layer and the physical layer is the responsibility of the network layer or the network, right? So the application, presentation, session, transport is the responsibility of the host. With that, it means that the host has to handle all these operations of encapsulating the data, and then the network data link layer and physical layer will be the network with the responsibility of the network to take this information and pass it on, right? The second image here is, we'll talk about in a very high level about what each layer does. So let's look at the physical layer. This provides a physical medium through which the bits are transmitted. So as you all know, you are connected to a Wi-Fi network, and that Wi-Fi network actually passes all your information via the network cable or the broadband cable which is connected to your router, correct? So that's your physical medium which is transmitting bits via the network cable. Then the data link layer is used for error-free transfer of data frames. So the data link layer here is the one who splits the information into data frames, like small electronic digital frames, which can be converted to bits and then sent across to the network cable. The network layer is responsible for moving packets from source to a destination. So that's where the network actually assigns an IP address or the you know the MAC address, or the layers and everything else happens on the network layer. The transport layer is reliable message delivery from process to process, which is a TCP layer, UDP protocol or TCP protocol, which is more reliable communication. Like you and I are speaking, because transport layer is using a protocol which is more reliable for end-to-end communication. The session layer again is used to establish, manage, and terminate sessions. Like what we are trying to, what's happening now between you and me is a session. That session, entire session management is done by this layer of session managers. The presentation layer is the one which is responsible for translation, compression, and encryption, right? So you might be using a different laptop, somebody might be using a Mac, somebody might be using a Windows machine. Presentation layer is the one which is responsible to translate the information from the lower layers to the upper layer, and then once the information coming from upper layers to lower layer, it helps translate it back, compress the content, encrypt it, and then send it across to the next lower level, so that it uses the network bandwidth towards optimum utilization. Then the final layer, the seventh layer, would be your application layer. This layer provides the service to the user, which is the UI which you are using now, like your browser, like your PowerPoint, or anything for that matter, is which provides you that information which you can use and interact with the system, right? Let's look at animation. So if you see, the data is getting passed on from your application, presentation, and session layers. Then you add, the transport layer add the TCPs, the network layer would add the IP address, data link layer would add the Ethernet protocol layers, it becomes a frame. Then it pushes the physical medium, it converts into bits of streams. Then the same packet gets reopened again. So every layer will strip that layer of information, what is provided by the upper layers. Again. So if you again see it, so the data is created by the application, presentation, session. It comes to a transport layer. The transport creates a segment called a TCP protocol. The network adds the destination and source IPs. The data link layer will add the MAC address, the Ethernet connection, or the created as a frame. Then it comes to a physical layer. Then the physical layer comes to a data link layer. It removes the Ethernet MAC address, right? And then it rips off the Ethernet address. Then it comes to network layer. Network layer takes the IP address, sends it to transport layer. Transport layer understands it's a TCP packet. It's understand its segment, and then it pass it on to the session transport and presentation layer to do the decapsulation of it. So this whole process is called encapsulation and decapsulation, right? If we look at that post office analogy, so the data was encapsulated. So you put a letter in an envelope and then write a TCP, write a destination address and the sender address, right? That goes into a post box, right? Post box, again, somebody comes and collects it from a post box, takes it to another central sorting area, and then puts it on a bus which goes to the appropriate location. And then the same process happens of redoing or undoing whatever was done. Like, okay, going and understanding, okay, this is for what location, they'll send it to that location, they'll open up, they open up a box which goes to that particular location, then they put it on the same post office, then a guy comes in, then and you do it, and you open the envelope and read the data back again. For you to send a letter again, you do the same thing of writing a letter, putting it in an envelope, and then providing it the sender address and the receiver address and sending it back again. Similarly, on a network, every communication, every piece of communication which is happening between the sender and the receiver goes through all the 7 layers while getting added some of the details which is necessary for the communication to go through, right? We'll talk about each layer in detail in the next few slides. Understand what TCP adds as a TCP layer, what network adds as an IP layer, and why it becomes a packet there. Data link layer adds the Ethernet address, and why it becomes a frame there, and why we call it a stream of bits and physical layer. All right, we'll go through all the scenarios. Any questions, guys? Do you think it's too much for one day? Anybody there? Or
Yeah, we are there.
okay. Do you want me to go ahead, do it, or you want me to take a break, or you want to see that next week we can do a fresher class, or this space is enough for you?
Yeah, it's team based.
Okay, and I think I'll defer to Srimala and Prasad, who's on the call as well. So you guys want to go ahead? I think we'll have 15 minutes more, because I don't want to kind of break the session, because this OSI layers needs to go in a flow. We can cover this entire session again, but I want to do it in one shot rather than breaking it up and start doing it all over again next week.
Yeah, I think from me it's good to go.
Okay, you want to go ahead or do the next week?
Continue.
Continue. Okay. And Srimala, for you?
Yeah, continue, Kishore.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that. So, okay. So let's try to understand, there are mnemonics, or try to understand the various ways to remember OSI layers is by this. So all people seem to need data processing, right? Application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link layer, physical layer. People get confused. What is the layer 7 and what is layer 1? So always remember, layer 7 is your application layer, and your layer 1 is your physical layer, right? So all people seem to need data processing would be your kind of a shortcut to remember this OSI layers. And so in the animation, when we saw every layer has a different protocol data units. Like, we saw the segments, packets, frames, and bits conversion. So OSI layers, each layer adds a header containing information specific to a layer, right? These headers are called protocol data units, and the process of adding these headers are called encapsulations, right? So we have in the physical layer, we have bits. Data link layer, we have got frames. Network layer, we have got packets. Transport layer, we have got segments. And session, presentation error, we don't have any PDUs as specific, right? So your bits are nothing but data in the layer consists of stream of bits. Again, these are encoded signals for digital transmission. Frames are nothing considerable block of information, like chunks of information, which can be broken easily and then recovered later for collecting the frames again and recollecting or restitching the data back again. Again, packet also consists of control information, like what is the network address, error detection, what are the flags, and everything else, right? So let me show you an example for that. Why is that? So let's look at a packet capture in real time. Okay. Escape. Okay. So I am looking at a packet now, right? Remember what we spoke about there. We spoke about frames, packets, and segments. So this is a real packet. So why do you think a packet is? Why do we talk like saying packet of information? The reason why we say packet of information is, if I give you, so okay, simple analogy. If I give you a 50 kilo rice bag, would you be able to carry it in one shot? Say for 2 kilometers by carrying on your shoulders? No, right? But if I divide that into 1 kilo packets and then put 10 different people in between that 2 kilometers, don't you think it's easier for you to carry it?
Yes.
Right? So that's why so your 50 kilo rice bag is the data which you want to send, but you don't want to send the entire 50 kilo packet, because if you drop that packet in between, the entire information is lost, the entire bag is lost. But if you send one packet at a time, say suppose 1 kilo at a time, even if one packet is lost, you don't worry, you can resend the packet again. It's better to lose one packet than to lose the entire information there. So that's the reason is your entire information is divided into packets or divided into small packets before it's sent out. So for the entire communication, what you're seeing between a source and a destination is all this packet communication. These are all, each is individual packet, which has its own information. Everything is there for the other person to understand what type of packet it is and what it needs to do, right? So let's look at a frame, so which is your data link layer. So when you're talking about your data link layer or your frame, so it talks about how much bytes are written. Like it says, okay, 62 bytes are on the wire. What is encapsulation? Ethernet 1. What is the arrival time? The epoch time, the captured bytes, right? The protocols in the frame, Ethernet type, IP and TCP, and the source and port and whatever that is. So and it has got some frame number 1, right? It has got frame number 1. If you see, it's a frame number 2. So communication started from here, which is a frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5, frame 6. So that's how it will start naming itself, numbering itself, so that it understands which frame am I, and if I missed a frame, I need to request from that frame to come back again from the receiver. So this is your data link layer. The frames are nothing but your data link layer. We'll again talk about data link layer in little detail, but I just want to give you a practical understanding of how a packet looks like in real time. And if you can see that, so you can correspondingly see the same things, what you read and understand in your OSLAS. So that's your data link layer. Let's move on to your network layer. Your Ethernet packet, right? So what happens here, your Ethernet has nothing but your MAC address. Your MAC address is nothing but a unique address for your network NIC card, which is network information card. So every card will have specific information, and this is what gets captured at the Ethernet level, right? It says, okay, the destination's Ethernet address is this, the source Ethernet address is this. I want to communicate to this destination or to this destination. And the source is my Cisco, XYZ, and the type is IPv4 communication, right? And then you have something called as the IP protocol. The IP packet will have your source address and destination IP address. The Ethernet packet, Ethernet frame will have your, Ethernet.
MAC address.
No, IP address, MAC address and IP address both as well, right? So it says about IP address. It talks about different fields in the IP addresses, like the flags and everything else. And then you come up to your transmission, which is a segment, which talks about what type of ports are being used. TCP, transmission control protocol. What ports am I using? What flags am I using here? And then what do you call? You'll have some other information, which is your unique identifiers for your TCP segment. Right? Window value is 8197 or 8192. Calculate the window size, like how much amount of data can I send through that. Header is 28 bytes, and it will give you all sort of details which is required for the packet to go through. So the one packet is divided into so many different segments for it to go through. You have got a frame, you've got an Ethernet capsule, you've got an Ethernet frame, you've got an IP header, IP protocol, IP header, then you've got a TCP header, which talks about the TCP protocol, what you're using, and then which ports you're trying to communicate with. And the sequence numbers, right? Sequence number. Yeah, here it is. This is an acknowledgement to segment. So every info, if you try to read the headers itself, you'll have a lot of information saying that this is an acknowledgement segment for frame 1, which is the earlier frame, the frame 1, right? Again, you will have questions, I understand, but again, let's read about this and then better understand the concept there. So we understood physical layer, it's bits, data link layer, it's frames, network, it's packet, transport is segments. So physical layer controls the signaling and transferring of raw bits onto the physical medium, right? Your cabling, your network connection receivers, your Wi-Fi router, your network cable, your NIC card, your wireless radios, your hubs and everything else is part of your physical layer, right? So protocol data units are nothing but your bits. So what happens with data link layer, the L2 layer, the second data link layer will send the frames to the physical layer to convert into bit of streams. This is transmitted over the transmission medium, and then it's sent to the another physical device, which again assembles the bits of streams, decodes it, and then creates it again into frames, right? Physical layer characteristics is all about representation of zeros and ones, like at the data rate, physical topology, transmission medium, and XYZ. Okay, perfect. So next move on to data link layer. As we spoke, that data link layer is all about the frames. So right, a data link layer packages the higher level data into frames. Data link layer contains source and destination hardware address. The most common hardware address is the Ethernet MAC address. The data link layer has got two layers, which is the logical link control and media access control, right? So in the data unit, the protocol data units is a frame. So since we said that there are two, it's split into two sub layers, which is the media access control layer and logical link control, right? So data link layer does many tasks on behalf of the upper layer, which is the third layer, which is a network layer, which does framing, addressing, error control, flow control. So what does addressing mean? So addressing means which network address am I trying to communicate to, right? Error control. So when there is an error happening, how does it control? What does it do? How does it react to that error? Do I send the frame again, or do I need to do some other actions? So it identifies and defines what error control mechanism can be in place. It also controls the flow control, handles the flow control. Flow control can be trying to have a discussion saying that, okay, I can transmit this much amount of data and I can handle this much amount of data. That's it. If beyond this, if you send me this data, yeah, I think you lose this data. I'll not be able to process it, right? And by that, it says it controls the flow of information on the network cable or the network medium, so that there are less number of errors and more data flow and connectivity is always remaining, right? Again, as I said, the MAC or media access control address is the unique address for a hardware or network interface card. So here is the differentiation. So first 3 octets would be your unique identifier for the manufacturer, and the later 3 would be your network interface controller specific address, right? So in a diagrammatical way, this is how it looks like. So the network data layer sends the packets to the data link layer, and it gets converted to your frame, right? And then it adds the header and the footer, the tail and head of the data link layer, and in the middle, so that's get encapsulated. The network layer data, L3 data gets encapsulated in the data frame, and then that starts getting pushed through the physical layer. Same thing happens at the physical layer. It sends the bits of streams apart to the data link layer, which is the physical layer. The frames, the header and the tail gets removed, and then the data L3 data or the network layer data gets pushed onto the upper layers, right? So you might ask, what does the logical link control does? So again, as I said, the logical link control is all about flow control and error control. Media access control handles the actual communication or the control of the data from the upper layers into conversion into physical digital streams, electronic streams. The network layer, as I said, it's again individual packets. All right. Network layer is responsible for source to destination delivery of packet possible across multiple network links. Network layer ensures that each packet gets from point of origin to the final destinations, right? So what does it do? So the protocol data unit for network layer would be your packets, right? So responsibility of each network layer would be addressing the devices and networks, populating your routing tables with specific routes, because your packets will have IP addresses. That addresses will get added to the routing information, which is nothing but, let's say suppose you frequently communicate with a certain set of individuals. So what do? You store them as part of your contact list, right? So say suppose, for your vegetables, you'll have one person for the groceries. For your party needs, you'll have one person, right? For your electronics needs, you'll have one person. For a plumber, you'll have one person. So similarly, your routing table will act in the same way. Okay, if you want to talk to that particular IP address, I can route you through this particular route, which is I already have been using to send the packets to. So that's how the routing packets get updates from the information from the packet itself. So then the packets also help in, or the network layer helps in incoming and outgoing, queuing of data, forwarding, and quality of service constraints set by the packets. So suppose you're watching video, right? Do you think the priority for those video watching packets would be similar to packets dealing with an email server? Anybody? Nobody there?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think is the priority between me watching YouTube packets or live streaming, and then something else related to an email communication? Which one do you think will get priority?
Those who means whatever CEV more, no, that will get the priority. Hello.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry.
whatever CEV more, no, that will it get the priority.
So in this case, YouTube, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does YouTube really works? It's a stream of video,
Yes.
right? Do you think you'll watch a video which is buffering or like stopping and coming? No.
No.
Right? So you will
Nowadays.
need the quality of service to be very high.
Yes.
So those are called quality of service packets, where the quality of the service is the constraint to set to these packets. So in your system, when you're watching a YouTube, that takes more precedence and priority than you doing any email communication. Right? That email communication will take a back seat than comparing to the packets which are used for streaming media. Or in this case, you and I are talking about it. Right? This is voice data. Do you think this packet will go in its own traditional way? No. Everything which I'm talking now gets digitally converted into packets with the highest quality of with highest quality constraints on the packet marked as urgent priority, and they are the first ones to be communicated and then sent across to the medium.
Okay.
Again, right? So hope you understand that concept. Again, network layer is also used for internetworking between two different subnets. Delivering of packets to destination is the best effort. This is what it tries to do it. It provides connection oriented and connectionless oriented. This is where your TCP and UDP will come into the place. We'll talk about that. So your network layer is nothing but your network addressing, is your IP address. IP address routing, unicast, multicast, broadcast, anycast, all this type of communication or IP routing will come into place now. I think more or less it's called anycast, or it can be like unicast, as it says here, destined for one host. Multicast destined for a group, right? So unicast is me talking to an individual person on a phone. Multicast is me talking to you guys as a group, right? Broadcast, I am just sending an information in a group of WhatsApp group. I don't really care whether somebody reads it or not. Anycast, whoever is next to me, I tell them. That's it. That's pretty much it in terms of routing, right? So if we have to, kind of refresh, rephase. So your data link layer talks about your frames, which deals with your Ethernet address. Network layer deals with your IP addresses, right? Again, your physical layer does the digital transmission. Data link layer talks about frames. Ethernet address. Your network layer talks about your packets with IP address in it. Source and destination IP addresses. They deal with quality of service. Again, in this image, if you see there, the transport layer information gets sent to the packet to the network layer, where the sender and receiver header gets added, or the IP address gets added there, and then sent across to the network data link layer. And again, decapsulation happens at the destination, where at the network layer, the packet is pushed across, and the network and the source and destination information or IP address are ripped off and then processed. Then we have something called as transport layer, right? The transport layer offers peer-to-peer and end-to-end communication connection between two processes on the remote, right? It's like browsers talking, right? If from my end, it's the browser. On server end, it can be the server application itself. So these are the two different processes which are trying to talk to each other, right? So transport layer communication falls under two categories. One is connection oriented, which is another is connectionless. What do you mean by connection oriented? Connection oriented is nothing but before let's take an example. So you and I decided on how do we want to talk about how our conversation, how our session will progress in a given day. So as I said, it can be specifically agreed upon parameters. So I said, the session is for 2 hours. I'll be talking about different sections. I'll talk about these things, and this much amount of data can be delivered. I'll give you a break in this times, and so on and so forth, right? Similarly, in a connection-oriented way, when 2 different systems are talking to each other, they will talk about multiple things in terms of what's your network speed, how much data you can send at one point of time, how much data you can process at one point of time, what's your error control, flow control, and all these mechanisms gets spoken about. And they agreed to each other. They agreed to each other. They agreed to each other, and then communicate. And then they communicate to each other, and then they decide upon to enable the communication. 1 second, guys. Sorry, guys, that was my son. And then we have something called as the next is connectionless. This can be requires no connection before data is sent. So these can be your file transfer applications, right? So example would be a politician giving speech. He does a broadcast. Nobody really, he's not bothered whether he's listening or not, right? He doesn't set up a communication between you two, right? So that represents a connectionless, and there are some protocols like DNS, domain naming services, is a protocol which is basically connectionless. The other party is not really interested, whether you got the request or not, right? Or a broadcast information. When you broadcast updates or broadcast information, you're not really required whether somebody received or not, or you want to set up a communication before talking to that particular person. Okay. So let's talk about the TCP/IP protocol suite. So in the transport layer, the connection oriented, connectionless are the 2 categories, and connection oriented is nothing but your TCP, transmission control protocol, which is connection oriented. User datagram protocol, UDP, is a connectionless, right? Again, let's look at TCP. How does it communicate? So when you want to establish a communication with, let's say, suppose you request for a web page called yahoo.com, right? So how does it set up? Let's look at, okay. Why? So I will be talking about these 3 packets, right? So if I show you the presentation, so it's a TCP packet, right? Let's look at a TCP packet. The TCP packet has something called a 3-way handshake, right? It does a 3-way handshake. So it initially sends out, hey, I want to communicate with you. The web server says, okay, I also wants to communicate with you. And then, you as a initiator, you says, okay, I acknowledge that you want to communicate with me and you agreed to communicate with me, and let's begin our communication, right? So to put in technical terms, me as a initial point A will start with sending a sync packet, which is SYN packet. The web server receives it. It responds with a sync ACK, which is synchronized as well as acknowledgement packet. When you receive the sync ACK packet, you will respond back with the acknowledgement saying that, yes, I received your acknowledgement and I also acknowledge it, and then let's begin the communication. So similarly, in this terminology, if you see here, this source is trying to send out a sync packet to this destination, right? Then what happens? The 25.101, there is a written communication from this IP address to this IP address saying that, yes, I also understand, and this is my synchronization acknowledgement packet. Then the initiator acknowledges and thanks him, saying that, yes, I acknowledge this connection, and let's begin it. Let's begin the communication. Yep. Right? So that's how your TCP communicates. So by doing all these things, there is a connection which is set up. You both are talking, you agreed on parameters, and you set up the communication, and while setting up the communication, you both will exchange multiple parameters like the source IP, destination IP, source MAC, destination MAC, ports which you want to communicate on, and the flow control, error control, packets, and everything else. Right? You, after these the three-way handshake, you'll also exchange certificates or some kind of encryption technologies which you want to encrypt your data towards, right? So that's why we call it as because since all these things happen here, the whole handshake process happens here, we call it as connection oriented. You want to make sure the connection is set up and it stays connected until unless we otherwise feel so. But if you look at UDP communication, there is no handshake, no nothing. The server, the laptop or desktop wants to communicate to a server on a specific port, right? And then it sends out information every 15-20 minutes and it forgets about it. Whether the server received it or not, it's not really required. It doesn't really matter. The source job is to keep sending out the information without worrying about whether this information was actually received or not. Right? I'll stop here. Any questions, guys?
Nothing from my side.
Okay. Okay.
What
So
is the use?
Sorry.
No. What's the use of that UDP? If that's
UDP, again, not all communications will require this whole process of handshake, right? And I'll give you an example as to why. There are technologies which you don't want to use it as a TCP. Let's say, suppose there are something called a broadcast connection. You have your DNS communication or your DHCP, which is the dynamic host configuration protocol for trying to identify who is my neighbor. Or in a big network, what happens is there is a DHCP communication. So these use UDP packets. So what happens? These are broadcast UDP packets, which says that anybody knows this IP address. I want to communicate to this IP address. Does anybody know this? In those scenarios, you'll use UDP packets because you don't know whom you're talking to or what's your destination, but you want some response. So if I put a broadcast or send a UDP packet to everyone, like a broadcast packet to everyone, somebody will respond back to me, and from there on I can start a TCP communication, right? So even before you set up your own TCP connection, like again, you browse your IP address or you browse a website in your phone, right? If that's a website which you never have accessed, every time there's a DNS server which picks up that communication, sends out UDP packets to understand which of the servers out there, DNS servers, can communicate back to you. I'll again show you an example of that. So suppose, let's take an example for this as a UDP. I want to communicate to you, to Prasad, right? But I don't know that I want to communicate to Prasad. I know that, your name is Prasad, but I don't have your phone number. I don't know how you look like. I don't have any facial recognition, nothing of that sort. But it's just suppose there are 10 people in the group. I'll say, does somebody know Prasad? I might have an initial for you. I might not know, right? I say somebody knows Prasad. Yes, so there might be Kiran who knows Prasad. So what it does is, this is again a UDP communication. This is a broadcast communication which I'm spreading, asking everyone. But I am trying to specifically access a website which Prasad has hosted, or I'm trying to specifically talk one-to-one connection with Prasad. Since I don't know Prasad, I'll talk to everyone and try to figure out whether they know him or not. So Kiran says, yes, I know Prasad. This is his phone number. This is how he looks like. So what I'll do is he passes on the information to me. Then I set up a one-to-one communication with you using the TCP protocol by messaging you saying, hello, Prasad, I want to talk to you. My name is Kishore XYZ. And then we on a separate channel set up one-to-one communication. That's where the UDP and 2CP play hand in hand, but they are interrelated to somehow each other in some of the processes, like as I explained now.
Okay.
Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So a TCP header would have multiple segments, right? So you will have source port, right? You'll have a 16-bit header source port, destination port. You'll have a TCP sequence number. You have an acknowledgement number. You have your flags. You have your window size, your urgent flag, options, checksum, dataset, reserved. All the parameters would be there for you to add your details in there. You might ask a question. In the TCP header, I don't see an IP address. IP address comes at network layer. TCP comes at your transport layer, right? So the source port and destination port is initially what it talks to, right? So even if you want to communicate to a web server, what do you communicate at? So what's your HTTP port number? Does anybody know?
8080 something.
8080, exactly. So that's the initial thing which you'll remember. The moment you type HTTP, it says HTTP 80, port number 80. The moment you type HTTPS, it's 443. If you type, say, suppose SMTP, it's 25 port number. So every port number will associate it with the protocol, which is what the transporter identifies. And then based on that, it tries to function accordingly, right? Since again, sorry, go ahead.
Can we say port is like a gate or an entry point to obtain the IP address or something?
Not exactly like a gate, but it's saying that a resource provider, right? So if I'm pointing out to see, go and talk to gate number 10. He will provide you something. So when I'm saying that you connect to port number 80, that will provide you the web page. If you connect to port number 443, which is HTTPS, that provides you a secure web page, right? If you connect to port number 25, so one server can have multiple ports open, which is providing different services. Similarly, like one building can have multiple gates providing you multiple services. Correct? So similarly, every port ties to one service which is providing. So you cannot go ahead.
And it's not necessary that everyone will have the same port number, right? I mean, it is up to us, or is it still unique always?
Like
there are we talked about.
Yeah, so there are some standard port numbers, like there are 1024 port numbers which are standard, which are like assigned ports which are supposed to be used for those services.
Okay.
And there are some things which you can customize as well. So suppose you can put a HTTP web page out there, but in the backend you can have a different port number for a specific communication, right? Because see, how would others understand what ports are you using, right? You don't want for the customer to find it difficult to communicate to you. You want to make his life easier by putting his ease of communication and do everything in the backend. So let's say suppose you have a server which initially takes the request, right, which is running at a port number 80, but you don't connect the server to your entire web page backend or web server in the backend, but you put an intermediate server which takes that request, reprocesses it, and then provides to the web server, which understands only that language which you want to specifically write it, right? So thereby you have a front facing towards a client, and you have your backend services doing their own job of it, like customization as well. But there are some standard services, like you cannot change your way of your web page, because probably others will not be able to support that, because they are not supporting your technologies. So there are 1024 initial standard ports which are assigned to a specific port numbers, which you should be using for your own communication.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So your responsibility for transport layer, it's a service point addressing, it's a connection or integral, it's a flow control. So now in this program, now in this image, you'll see a lot of other things which is happening in the transport layer. So your streaming video, your VoIP technology, your VoIP calls, your multiple web pages, your instant messaging, your email, everything is happening in a single time, as I asked earlier. But what happens is your segmentation will happen that, all the packets, all these packets from all these different programs or services what's running gets assigned in a segment and then get passed through. So if you see here, your priority is given for your streaming media. After that, your VoIP takes the priority. Then your instant messaging, because the word itself is instant. You need instant communication, right? So then your multiple web pages, then your web pages again, then your this thing. So this is how you segment packets and then send it across to the network, send it across on the network cable, so that they get their priority. What gets processed first is how it's arranged as a part of a segment, right? Error checking can be performed on the segment, on the data in the segment, to check for the segment has changed during the data time. So again, this is how your system prioritizes and then arranges your packets which needs more attention first, and then start transmitting them on that order, so that transmission is not lost. So that you and I are talking in real time now, this is not getting hampered by or this is how it's happening in the backend, because the transport layer is segregating all the packets or creating a segment, and all the other applications which are trying to communicate or using or require communication channel get the chance of segmented, and then the packets get arranged in the sequence order or based on the priority, and then pushed on the network. Okay, so the layered packet format. So before we go ahead, I just want to talk about the flow control, and there are other mechanisms which we want to talk about. But the encapsulation and decapsulation is a process which happens. So so the data starts off with the application layer. At the data link, at the presentation layer, the presentation header is get added. The session layer is added, and then you have the session layer, presentation layer, and then the data as well. Then a transport layer, you have your transport header, then the session header, then the presentation header. Network layer, it adds its own header. Then at the data link layer, you have the data link layer, the trailer, and the header, and then it gets converted to bits of preens. So this is how the data is getting encapsulated at source, and the decapsulation happens while everything gets started removing while it's going up. Right? So let's look at what is flow control. So flow control, sender does not flood the receiver, but maximum throughput, right? So again, let's say suppose you and I are communicating, right? I don't want to send you more amount of data which you cannot handle. But before that, what happens is sender and receiver agrees upon a transmission medium. So what they say is, you send me 50 bytes and wait. I will acknowledge, and then you again send the 50 bytes. So it can be stop and wait or sliding window. So since I am, so in this case, I'm saying something, and I'm waiting and asking, whether you have any doubt. When you say you don't have any doubts, I'll move ahead. This is called stop and wait. In a sliding window, I will go through an entire session, and then at the end of the session, we'll ask you, do you have any questions? If you say yes, we'll answer that. If you say no, and then I'll continue with my next session as well. So that's called sliding window. I'll send the entire amount of data, and then I'll wait for acknowledgement, rather than sending one packet, wait for acknowledgement, sending another packet, wait for acknowledgement. I'm not going to do that. So that's called your stop and wait and a sliding window. But here in flow control, the receiver and the sender needs to agree upon what's their communication, what's their maximum throughput range in terms of connectivity, so that they both can transmit the same amount of data without choking each other out. Then the error control. The error control is nothing but delivery of frames without error. So I send out a packet to you or send out a frame to you, but you never got it, right? So what I do is I never received an acknowledgement from you. So that means for the packet which I sent you first, since I did not receive an acknowledgement from your end, I'll think that there was a problem, right? I will send the packet again to you after waiting for a certain time. So once I send out a packet to you, I'll wait for, say, suppose 10 milliseconds for your acknowledgement. If I don't get it, I'll resend the packet to you and wait for your acknowledgement, right? Until I get an acknowledgement, I'll keep doing the same thing over and over again, right? In some cases, what happens is there is like, there are 1, 2, 3 packets which has gone, but this receiver never acknowledges for packet 3. So what happens? I'll resend the packet 3 along with packet 5 as well, right? So I get a packet acknowledgement for packet 5 or packet 4 and packet 5 as well, and then I'll do the communication again. So error detection, cyclic redundancy checks, sequence numbers, acknowledgement numbers. So in the packets, we saw our sequence numbers. Let me show you that. Where is that? Yeah. Yeah, sequence numbers, you see. This sequence number is 1. Next sequence number is 230, right? So this is also what gets carried here. So they'll talk about sequence numbers. So if the sender, if you are using a TCP and if you are using a connection oriented protocol, they'll wait for the sequence numbers. They'll, based on the sequence number, they'll try to arrange themselves, right? And if they don't receive acknowledgement for the sequence numbers, they'll basically identify there is an error detection, and based on that, they'll ask for retransmission of the same packet. So error recovery is automatic request repeat, stop and wait, go back and selective reject. So what happens is I am sending a bunch of packets to the receiver. So the receiver takes the packets and then it starts processing them. But if in one packet it identifies an error, it says it selectively rejects that particular packet and asks the sender to send this packet again because it found an error in the packet, or there was the protocols or the fields did not match properly. So it can do that as well. So it can recover from the error at later point of time as well. So so the whole network or the OSI layer works is like that. I am sending bunch of packets. I'm sending you packets after packets after packet. At the receiver, what he does is he collects all the packets and then arranges them by their sequence number and then reads the data out of it. Practically showing you. So this is a TCP stream. So what happens when the system reads the data is like this. So all these packets are sending similar type of data. All these packets are sending similar type or related data or for a related packet, right? Let me mark these and we'll like this. You see? So this particular all packets are related to one single communication here or accessing these pages, this one page. It means though these packets are sent out, they get rearranged at the receiver's end and they read this data and then this is what happens. Okay, then we have your connection oriented versus connection less. So connection oriented is telephony system, connectionless is your postal system. It's as simple as that. Okay. Any questions, guys?
No.
Perfect. For Srimala and Prasad, anything from your end?
No, Kishore. But sending response is acknowledgement. Is that acknowledgement?
Didn't get you.
I
Can
mean,
you say that?
I mean, acknowledgement means you are showing one a slide, right? Acknowledgement.
This
I mean,
one's
first, yes.
yeah. So acknowledgement is nothing but in practical terms, this is what I'm talking about. This ACK packet, right? This is the acknowledgement, saying that yes, I received your connection, or I received that packet. That's the acknowledgement which I get from the receiver. So if you say this 139, 199, 184, 166 is talking to 10, 12, 25, 101, right? And it's saying I received an acknowledgement for your sequence number, this one, and this is my acknowledgement number. And again, for other sequence number, this is my other acknowledgement number.
Okay.
Right? So acknowledgement is nothing but yes, I got your information. You can send rest of that. This is all part of your error control or flow control or error recovery. So again, acknowledgement is nothing but if you want to look at it, let's look at that. Yeah, I see ACK packet. So your ACK is nothing but here, right? Acknowledgement set 1. So in the packet, when the system reads this as acknowledgement set to 1, it understood, yes, acknowledgement came back again. I received an acknowledgement from the receiver, because 139 is a sender, 10 dot is a receiver. Now in this case, 10 dot responded back to 139 with the acknowledgement packet. Is it clear, or are you still confused?
Yes.
Okay. So there is, I think we'll talk about, hold on a second, where is it? So we've got a session, and then there are other layers as well, which I want to talk, but I think we'll do it next week.